Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and CEO of NMX, Rick Calvert.
Good morning, everybody. Is the mic working yet? Oh, can you guys hear me? Awesome. Who said no? Thank you. Can you turn the house lights down? You get a chance? Cool. So, thank you guys all for coming. Who had travel problems getting here? Who had to pay for an extra flight? I know one guy who did. Wow. Thank you. So sorry. Some idiot scheduled the show in January. That would be me. I will talk about that a little bit in a minute. So I thought I'm going to do something a little bit different than I normally do. I just usually come up, thank our sponsors, and get off the stage. Those of you that know me know even though we share everything about the show online, all the social media channels, I'm a pretty private person, so I don't normally talk about myself. But we've been doing the show for 7 years now, and I thought it was time to talk a little bit about the history of the show. Last year was also one of the hardest years of my life and also one of the most amazing years of my life. And you guys have no idea how close we were to not even having a show this year. So, but we always knew we're going to make it happen. It just seemed like everything kept going wrong, but we were like, it's going to happen. And we worked our butts off to make it happen. And my staff in particular, thank you to all of you guys for doing that. So, despite all the issues that I had last year, well, they're throwing the slides a little bit early here, but November 12th of last year, 11/12/13, this little girl was born here in Vegas. Changed my life forever. Those of you that are parents, you know that. Those of you who are not parents, parents always tell you you can't describe the feeling as happy as you think it will make you feel. You're happier than you could ever imagine. So I highly recommend it. And funny enough, my wife wasn't due for another week, but I had to speak here at a conference. And so I said, come with me just in case. I'd rather you be here. We have the baby in Vegas than, for some reason I miss it. And about 4:30 in the morning before I was supposed to give the talk, she went into labor. And sure enough, she was 5 minutes apart. We went to the hospital and it just went boom, boom, boom. There we had our daughter. It was amazing. And instantly she had me wrapped around her little finger, as most dads will attest. I don't think that's technically called a selfie. I've got a lot more if anybody else wants to see them. But I promise not to bore you with them if you don't want to see them. Anyway, I thought I'd share a little bit about how New Media Expo started. So, and I'm going to try to give you the shortest version. But you go back to the year 2000. I've been reading blogs since 2000, since the presidential elections. I've been running trade shows since 1997. That was my day job before this all started. And just by some weird coincidence, when I said I want to be in the trade show business, which you have to be a freak to want to do this, but I love conferences and trade shows. And so I looked in the paper and there was an ad for this trade show called the SEMA show. Any car geeks in the room? So you'll know SEMA is everything you don't need for your car to make it go cooler or look faster. Or look faster, go faster, look cooler. So it was the SEMA show, and when I started, it was 70,000 people. When I left, it was over 100,000 people. They just had the show a couple months ago. It was 150,000 people now. That was an amazing experience. And so I worked for Comic-Con for a short while, and I was doing this woodworking show. That one's only 30,000 people, but it took up the whole Las Vegas Convention Center, really big machines, not nearly as fun as this. And I was driving home from work one day, and I'm listening to this talk radio. That's how geeky I am about politics, by the way. I'm a super geek about news and politics. And so I'm listening to a guy named Hugh Hewitt. Does anybody know who Hugh is? Yeah, so nationally syndicated guy. I used to hate him, by the way. I used to just listen to him and say, oh, that guy's an idiot, and the things that he said. So anyway, he said something one day, and I called in, and we had he said something, I said something. So that's how geeky I am. I call in to talk radio, right? You know those people are weird. And so at the end of the conversation, he said, you should start a blog. And I'd been thinking about it since 2000, but I thought it was hard, because I used to always tell people I'm not a techie, I'm not a geek. But I'm definitely geeky now, particularly about new media. After meeting so many of you people have taught me so many things. And so I went home that night and I Googled, how do you start a blog? And Blogger came up. I didn't know at the time it was owned by Google. But anyway, it said, start your blog. So I pushed the button and I filled it out. In 5 minutes, I had a blog called The Real Ugly American. If you want, you can go look it up. It's really embarrassing, but... So I put up my first post, and I emailed Hugh, and I said, hey, Hugh, I started a blog. And then he put up a link the next day, a post saying, welcome to the blogosphere, The Real Ugly American. I'm like, whoa, this famous guy is linking to me. This is really cool. And so I kept doing it. I kept getting interviews with these really famous people. I was just asking, and they kept saying yes. I'm like, why are they saying yes to me? And then I was getting links from these big political bloggers, both the left and the right. That was part of my thing. I'd like to get my friends on the left and my friends on the right to talk to each other and debate without calling each other names. For those of you travel bloggers out there, or mom bloggers, if you think you guys could be catty political bloggers, that's a nasty fight. I mean, those people throw hammers. So anyway, one day I get this email that says, what would it cost to advertise on your blog? And I said, advertise on my blog? I could make money doing this? This would be my job? Awesome. I need to go to the blogging trade show. So again, for those of you that know the trade show business, there's a trade show for everything. The most maybe horrible show, boring show you never want to go to in your life is called the Bulk Solids Show. It is exactly as boring as it sounds. I don't really know what it is. A friend of mine used to run it, but I know I don't want to go. And so I went searching for the blogging show, and I found a few different events out there. This was in 2005. I found a guy named Dave Weiner. Who knows who Dave Weiner is? Anybody? A couple? The man who invented RSS, arguably. Really super smart guy. He had tried to start a blogging conference. I can't remember what it was called now, but it went on for a year or two and kind of faded away. Then I found there was another event called Blog Business Summit. There was another event called Blog Her. I'm sure everybody's heard of that. It just started. There was an event that I knew called MilBlogCon, which was military bloggers. Amazing. And there was even an event called GodBlogCon. So even Biola University had started a blogging conference for Christians. And those are all really cool, but that's not the show I want to go to. I want to go to an event where all of those people come together as an entire industry event. And so I started doing the research, and I realized, obviously there's other things other than political blogs. I thought that's all there was. I'd never heard of Dave Weiner. Does anybody know who Robert Scoble is? I like to remind Robert how many people don't know who he is. Great guy. He spoke here many times. His wife actually has worked for us at the show. Marion was a great lady. But I found Robert Scoble, and I found TechCrunch, and I'm like, all those tech bloggers need to come, and obviously the mom bloggers need to come. And then I realized, wait a minute, this isn't just about blogging. It's about podcasting. It's about web TV, or call it digital video, call it YouTube, call it whatever you want. Back then, when we first started, Twitter didn't exist yet, right? MySpace was the biggest social network. Facebook was kind of coming up. I'm like, all of those things need to be a part of this new media industry is what I've always called it. Now a lot of people call it social media. I find that people try to sell me things, call it social media. Content creators call it new media. So I said all of those things need to be part of it. So that's the event we started to build. Funny enough, days before we launched Blog World and New Media Expo, the name has always been Blog World and New Media Expo, I found this other event called Podcast and Portable Media Expo. I'm like, what the hell is this? Podcast and Portable Media Expo. There's no event out there. Where did this come from? And it happened to be in Ontario, California, which was only about 20 minutes from my house at the time. I'm like, it's right next to my house, and it's happening next week. And who's running this event? Wait a minute, I know this guy, Tim Berkwin, who had a podcast called The Podcast Brothers with his brother Emil. I don't know if Tim made it this year, but he usually comes to the show still. And his show started off as Podcast Expo, Podcast and Portable Media Expo, Podcast and New Media Expo, and then the last year just New Media Expo. So for those of us who give us guff about changing the name, he changed the name every year of his show. So I'd say we were ahead of that curve. And so anyway, the event was happening in a couple of days. So I drove to Ontario. I bought a ticket. Actually, the tickets were free, weren't they, Karen? I thought they were. The expo was free the first year, and I was cheap. I didn't buy a conference pass. I got a free ticket. So I went to the show, and I went and saw Tim. So Tim and I knew each other from the trade show business. He had offered me a job to work on another trade show called Small World Expo. He wanted to do for nanotechnology. And so I went and talked to Tim, and I said, hey, check out this event that I'm going to do. And he looked at my card, and it said Blog World at New Media Expo. And he's like, we're changing our name to New Media Expo. I'm like, it's cool. Maybe we can work together. We'll figure it out. We should really kind of all be together. And he's a really, really good guy. And the event was amazing. The energy at Podcast Expo, those first couple of years, unbelievable. So anyway, one thing led to another. At one point, Blog World and New Media Expo were in Vegas a month apart from each other. And everybody was like, this is confusing. Which one's which? Where are we supposed to go? And Tim wrote this post saying, I'm done. This is too much of a pain in the butt. I'm quitting. And I had wrote a post saying, this is amazing. This is so much fun. I can't believe it. And so Tim gave me a call and he goes, Rick, would you like to buy me out? And I said, absolutely. And so we said, oh, right, now all the podcasters will come to the show. And then we found out the podcasters hated us because our name was Blog World. I apologize, okay? We changed the name. We love podcasters. And we kept telling them, we love you guys. I'm like, no, you don't. Your name's Blog World. And one year, but some podcasters love this. Is Cliff in the room? Cliff Ravenscraft? So I think he's out there getting ready. So we kept trying to do new things for podcasting, get the podcasters to come, and we kept falling on our face. I remember I wrote this one tweet about how people who it was when the iPad came out, and there was some problems when it first came out, and I said, oh, all you fanboys waited in line all night for the iPad. It doesn't even work, suckers. And all these podcasters got pissed at me because they're all Mac fans. And I'm like, you guys, it's Blog World, not Mac World. Don't be mad. But they were still mad. I think Victor Callejo is still mad at me about that, Karen. Anyway, so a couple years go by, and we're trying to engage with podcasters, and Lynette, who will be up here in a minute, is one of the people that I reached out to. We geeked out about podcasters. I'll talk about her. I said, Cliff came to the show in New York in 2011, and I think he was just attending. I don't think he spoke that year. And he's like, wow, the show's amazing. I don't know why there aren't more podcasters here. They should be here. And so I don't know why I didn't think of it that minute, but a few months later it sunk in. I'm like, I should call Cliff. He should be our director of podcasting. He's the podcast answer man. I mean, he should be the guy. So I called him. We talked for an hour and a half maybe, and I convinced him. And he said, okay, Rick, I'll do it. And so for a couple years now, Cliff has put together an amazing podcasting program for us. We finally got it right. One year, I remember we called the track digital broadcasting because even Leo Laporte didn't want to call it podcasting, right? That kind of shows you how early on we are. The people can't even agree on the terminology. People used to hate to call them blogs. Now we've given up that battle. It's blogs. People tried to change the name from podcasting. That battle's over. It's called podcasting. Web TV is having that exact same argument right now. Is it web TV? Is it YouTube? Is it digital video? What do you call it? So the battle's not even, the terminology is not even settled yet. That's how early days we are. So all of you in this room really are part of the media revolution, which is a pretty amazing thing. By the way, it took us 7 years to come up with that tagline because we couldn't even figure out how to describe it. We knew this was this amazing thing happening, and it finally came to us. So anyway, last year we hosted the Podcast Awards. It was the 8th annual Podcast Awards that Todd Cochran has been running, sometimes alone in his room, in his studio in Hawaii, and going, here's the winner, with holding up an award. Is Todd in the room? But we had a great time last year. It was amazing. Leo hosted the awards. This year we have Dr. Drew coming to host the Podcast Awards. It'll be even bigger. It'll be up here on the big stage. Thrilled about that. And now this year, coming back to scheduling the show in January, there's another guy, Tim Street. Tim, are you here? So Tim is now our director of web TV, among many other things. Tim started a show back in 2005, I think, maybe even 2004, called French Maids TV, arguably one of the first successful podcasts or even web TV shows. Again, call it what you will. It was a huge success, and he's been doing it forever. And he's been to every Podcast Expo. He's been to every Blog World. And so I approached him. He told me about this new association, International Academy of Web Television, that he was going to be on the board of. And I'm like, that's somebody we need to be involved with. Tell me more about it. So anyway, they had their first show a couple years ago, IWTV Awards. It's basically the Oscars for the internet. And I went to the show, and CES is actually a paying sponsor of the Web TV Awards. So that's why they're in January. It's their fault. So blame the Web TV guys. Why we're in January, it's your fault. And last year, we hadn't signed a contract for our dates yet, and I said, Dave, we could move to January. We could be next to the Web TV Awards and kind of make it part of the show. And I convinced him. Dave was right. We shouldn't have moved to January, Dave. So anyway, we did, and the Web TV Awards happened the day after New Media Expo, and we built that relationship with IWTV, and now this year we're producing the Web TV Awards here at New Media Expo, which I'm thrilled about. A lot of people called 2013 the year of podcasting. 2014 will be the year of web TV, I promise you. Video is about to explode in a way and put a crunch on television. I was just talking to Brad Wyman backstage, and Brad will be on here this afternoon with Penn Jillette giving a talk about their new movie, a crowd-funded movie. That's definitely going to be the future. Anyway, that's the history of New Media Expo, which brings us here today. I want to thank a few people. One, Chris Brogan. Chris, are you here? So I met Chris at Blog Business Summit as I was leaving up in Seattle. And Patty, who was employee number 1 at New Media Expo and a friend of mine for 25 years, said, Rick, you have to meet this guy. He's really nice, and he seems really smart, because Patty doesn't know anything about new media. So I went and met Chris, and everybody was pretty much gone. And we started talking for a little while, and I'm like, yeah, this guy knows all sorts of stuff. We just geeked out for about an hour and a half. Both of us had to go to the airport and catch our plane, but we kept starting to walk away, and then, oh yeah, and another thing. And that was before Chris was Chris Brogan. And congratulations, Chris, on all your success. I mean, you absolutely deserve it. Last night, Chris and I are sitting there chatting, and a guy's walking by, and he stops, and he looks back like this. He goes, are you Chris Brogan? And Chris goes, yeah, I'm Chris. He goes, I'm a huge fan. I think his name was Sean. Sean, are you here? Yeah. So Sean is a fanboy of Chris Brogan. So Sean is one of the people who paid for a different flight to get here. It's your first time, right, Sean? Left his pregnant wife at home, and he got to meet Chris Brogan before the show even started. So I think didn't you just get to the hotel when we saw you? And so Chris goes, well, you should probably take a picture with, he goes, Chris, can I take a picture with you? And Chris is like, yeah, sure, does all the time. He goes, you should really get Rick in the picture too, it's his show. And, I know Sean didn't recognize me, and he's like, oh yeah, whatever. So I am not a celebrity at all, except for maybe a little bit during these 3 days. And so, although some people tell me I look like Chris Brogan, but he keeps changing his hair, and I can't keep up with him. And now he's thinner than me. We had a bet a couple years ago. I lost 40 pounds. I crushed Chris in the bet. But now I've gained it all back, and now he is looking very svelte. Good job, man. Keep it up. So this year, one of my resolutions is to get back in shape. But anyway, thank you, Chris, for all your support and everything that you do for us. A couple other people, Lee Odden, Lynette Young, have been to many, many New Media Expos. They're going to be speaking this morning. I'm honored to have them giving a keynote today. Brian Solis, Robert Scoble, again, who's been here from the very beginning. Mark Cuban, who came to our first keynote because Dave sent him a message on Facebook. Wow. Matt Mullenweg. Actually, the first keynoter at New Media Expo was Matt Mullenweg from WordPress. I stalked him for a year to get him to say yes, and he almost didn't make it. He was walking around the Hilton a few minutes before the keynote because he thought the show was at the hotel. And a couple of attendees walked up to him and go, hey, aren't you Matt Mullenweg? And he looked like he was 12 back then, right? And really quiet. He goes, yeah. He goes, aren't you supposed to be talking right now? He goes, yeah, I'm looking for the show. They're like, you're in the wrong place. Follow us. And so they brought him over to the convention center, and he made it up on stage just in the nick of time. So there's so many other people. My staff, again, Patty, Mary Jo Manzanares, who's our director for TBEX, she called me about 2 years ago and said, hey, Rick, she knew we wanted to do some other vertical events, and travel was one of them. She goes, I think Kim might want to sell T-Bex. You should give her a call. We did. Bought T-Bex. You guys think travel bloggers, mom bloggers get cool stuff? You want to be a travel blogger. I don't want free diapers. I want free trips to Belize. You guys have it made. That is life. Be a travel blogger. So T-Bex has been amazing. Thank you, Mary Jo. She's our conference director. Carrie Abear, who works with Patty now. I almost got through the whole thing without crying. All of our staff. Tina, my partner Dave, and so many of you who helped make this dream come true for me. Thank you very much. So, we definitely need your help to make this media revolution happen. Lee Odden, who's going to come up in a minute, I remember he came to me the first or second year of the show, and he said, this is so much fun. You know, I'm meeting so many people. He's like, it's like meeting 3 different groups of friends who are at the same party who normally don't see each other. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Lynette, who I'm going to introduce right now. First, hold on. Mike, let's thank our sponsors this year. How about? First of all, thanks to our platinum sponsor this year, Marshall Silver. We've done a lot of cool things here in Vegas. A couple of years ago, I think 2009, 2010, Cirque du Soleil let all attendees go to a Cirque show of their choice. We've been to all the cool nightclubs in Vegas. Funny enough, a lot of you told us we'd rather just be in a meeting room and kind of talk to ourselves without all the loud music, so we're going to do that this time. But Marshall's going to do, if you don't know, funny enough, he lives in San Diego and just not down the street from me. He's a world-famous hypnotist, the best hypnotist in the world. He's going to do a live show for us tonight. So hypnotize a few of you and make fun of you. I'm going to try to get Chris involved in that. So come and see that tonight. It's a free show. So starting at 6:30, we'll have a little reception in here, and then Marshall will do the keynote tonight, the show tonight, and then he'll keynote tomorrow afternoon. Dragon Search, Rick Dragon, I know is not here yet. He's stuck on a plane. He's been amazing. We had a great conversation last year. Him and his team have done awesome stuff for us. .me has been a sponsor for a long time. Again, IWTV, thanks you guys. We're thrilled to be involved with you guys. Podcast Answer Man, Cliff Ravenscraft, Podcasting A to Z. Podcast One, Norm Pattis is going to be part of our keynote on Monday. Lose track of the days. U.S. Army, for those again that know me, military is really personally important to me. Thanks you guys for being a sponsor for so long. And WordPress, we had to chase those guys for years, even though Matt gave a keynote to get them to finally show up at the show. Thanks you guys. We love seeing WordPress here at the show. So please give them all a big hand, and thanks to all of our sponsors. So last thing I'll say is thanks to Lynette, who had to change planes and didn't get here till midnight last night and almost didn't make it. There was a point where Lee and Lynette both might not make it to the show, and that's why I thought, I should maybe prepare something just in case they don't get here. And so Lynette and I met at South by Southwest, I think 4 or 5 years ago now, and we started geeking out about podcasting as well. She's been a podcaster for a long time, actually ran a pod camp in Philadelphia, which Chris was a founder of with Chris Penn, PodCamp. And I said, Lynette, we're trying to connect with podcasters. Maybe you can help us with that. And she said, yeah, I'd love to. And so she's helped us quite a bit over the years. And then this funny thing called Google Plus came along, and Lynette just reminded, I knew it was 1 million followers. She's got 1.5 million followers on Google Plus. And now Lynette's got a best-selling book. She's speaks all over the world. And people are like, well, how did you become, this instant success with Google+? She's like, well, I've been doing it for 10 years. And so it finally happened, which is a lesson for all of us, is that if you're passionate about your content and your content is good, then keep at it. Success will come to you if you keep trying. And it depends on the way that you measure success. It may not be monetarily, but the way that you get rewarded by creating that content, it will happen for you if you believe in it and you work hard and your content is good. And I think that's one last thing I want to say before I ask Lynette to come up. There are a lot of social media events out there now that weren't there when we started. This event, and I think that our unique selling proposition, which people always talk about, is that we are an event for content creators. I'm a content creator. Lots of our staff are content creators. All of our speakers are content creators. This event, if you create content, if it's blogging, if it's podcasting, if it's web TV, if you're creating content for the web, this event is for you. All these other events out there are really for marketers, for PR people. And we love you guys, marketers and PR people. I know we have a lot of you here. And if you create content, then this event is for you. But I think the focus of those events is a little bit different. And that's what we will always be. We will be here. Content creators are number one for us. So again, thank you all for coming. Thank you for coming so early. Thank you for braving the weather. I will shut up now. And please welcome to the stage our opening keynote speaker, Lynette Young.
I'm glad that I made it here. Hey, Jess. Jess Kupperman is my rock. She talked me off the ledge yesterday and was like, the flights are all canceled. Philadelphia stinks. So thank you. What I want to talk about today actually came from Rick and this idea of this overnight success. He had given a little bit of the story about how he and I met at, where was it? South by Southwest a couple years ago. And he literally said over a couple of beers, he's like, wow, I didn't really know, I knew of him, and I had been to this conference since 2004, even before it was this conference. But he was like, I'm so proud of you, you're such an overnight success. And I looked at him and I wasn't sure if I was sad by that, because I'd been in the business for 20 years at that point, or excited. So what I wanted to bring to all of you today is not what I normally do. I normally train. I normally walk away with 3 key points about Google Plus or whatever. I mean, I used to train about Second Life, so there's that. Right? That was my first new media or Blog World talk was on Second Life. So we've evolved, or I've evolved. So I want to talk about this myth of becoming or being or wanting or hoping to be an overnight success. Not just in this field, but whatever you happen to do professionally, if this is a hobby, if this is the tool that you use to get your other message out, it's a myth. And when I describe it to people, I always use this analogy of an iceberg, right? So 90%, and don't look it up on Wikipedia because my percentages aren't exact, 90% of an iceberg is below the waterline. And that's where I work, and that's where all of you work. 10% is above the waterline. That's the part that people see. They download the podcast and they listen to you. They read your blog post. They, heart your Instagram photos. They see you on Twitter. That's the 10% that's above the waterline. We know that we need the 90% underneath it to get that job done above. So that's what I want to talk about today. This part is really hard for me, to be honest with you, because like I said, I'm a trainer. Like I want to teach you how to do things, actionable items. What I'm going to do today, because we are all storytellers, is I'm going to share some of my story with you. So I'm going to go back 25 years. That's when I started in this business of tech for me professionally. I was originally going to go to college for mortuary science because I was afraid of people, and I figured if they're dead, it's all right. So that didn't quite work out for me. So I said, where can I go where there's no people? I'll go into tech, right? There's no people. I'm going to sit in my little cave and work on my computer. And now look where I am, right? People. But this idea of working in technology as a young woman, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old in the early 90s is horrifying for me to think about right now. But that's where my 90% under the iceberg, under the waterline where I work starts with. So this first part of the story has to do with perception. I was 23 years old, working in a company, worked my way up very quickly, and was one of the managers in the department of 40 techs. And I think there were 3 women, 2 of them were admins, and then there was me. I took a lot of baloney in that job. I loved that job. I worked all the time. I was probably chemically addicted to caffeine at that point. It's what I did. It's what I loved. Computers, engineering, it was in my blood. I realized one day, I did employee reviews and all that business, that everyone that worked for me made more money than I did and had better titles on their business cards than I did. I'm an idiot. I'm 23. I'm going to march right up to my boss's boss, and I'm going to fix this. Meanwhile, I had a job offer from a different company for nearly double my salary. I wasn't willing to take that job for more money because my heart lied with where I was, because I had some sense of loyalty to them. There's perception of loyalty. I had my letter of resignation. I walk into my boss's office. I sit down. And I say, can I have business cards with a better title on it? I didn't even ask for more money. I just wanted new business cards. He went into a rant telling me, you know how expensive business cards are to publish? Right? I'm like, and I sat there and he yelled at me for what seemed like a day, and he taught me probably the most valid lesson of my life to this point. His name started with a P, and he had this big brass P, like this bookend, on his desk. And he said, do you know what this P stands for, Lynette? And I was like, Paul? And he's like, no, it stands for perception. And the perception of you walking in this room and asking me for a better title on your business card tells me that you think you're better than other people. That your perception that you want other people to have about you is that you're superior, blah, 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 goes into this whole thing. I'm horrified. I'm sitting in this chair. I've got tears streaming down my eyes. I'm in my hands, I'm crumpling up this resignation letter because I'm thinking to myself, my boss's boss doesn't have a very good view of me. I have to be at this company longer until he views me in a better light. And then he looked at me and he said, Lynette, do you know what else this P stands for? And I said, Paul. He said, no. And I'm not going to say what he said it stood for, right? I'm 23 years old, and he leans over his mahogany glass top desk, and he says that word to my face. I lost my mind. Let me just say there were no charges pressed. I didn't give him stitches or anything like that, but I did, I lost my shit. I'm just gonna say it the way that it was. I took that and I threw it across the room. I was so angry that someone could perceive me for just what I look like and not for the hard work, the talent, and the dedication that I had for someone. I did take that crumpled up resignation letter and I threw it at him and I walked out. That lesson stuck with me to this day. And in this digital media revolution, the idea of perception is more important than ever. The perception is the 10% above the waterline, right? What everyone sees on an iceberg, what we put out on Twitter, what we want people to perceive us as. But what I've realized in these 25 years since I've started in the business is that it has more to do with how we perceive ourselves than what other people think of us. If we are so self-monitoring professionally and personally that we're only going to put all the rosy, beautiful things out online, that we're going to edit our audio to the point where we never say, you know, we're human, it's going to happen. We disassociate ourselves with who we truly are. And I think that that is a very big disservice for ourselves because it's not, I don't want to get all like crazy and like kumbaya on us, but going forward, if you don't have a strong sense of your own self-image or your own self-perception of how you see yourself and how you want others to see you, by what you put out there, what you tweet, what you record, what you write, the world isn't going to take you for who you are. It took me from that point, and that was the early 90s, and so my next point, which was this idea of perseverance. That I had worked my way through these amazing companies, and I was like, I'm going to be the next Sheryl Sandberg, and I didn't even know who she was, and you know, this is going to be me. I'm just going to make things happen for myself. This part of the story is hard for me to tell. It was, I had just gotten married, I just had a baby, I had saved money, I was gonna start my own business, and I was gonna start into this business, right? I didn't know what it was gonna do. I was blogging since '97, this was about 2001. So I figured, this is what I'm gonna do, right? I'm gonna ditch corporate, I'm gonna go over here. I have a good self-worth, my professional image is okay now. And then, this part's so hard, 9/11 happened. I had a 1-month-old baby, Rick's daughter's age. I'd begged my husband to stay home with me because this infant was insane. She was colicky, she didn't sleep, blah, blah, blah. That morning, my husband stayed home from work. When I came off maternity leave, the plan was, in my own head anyway, I was going to start my own business. My husband is an independent business person. This is what I wanted as well. Everything in my life changed, and it became survival mechanisms at that point. Because my husband's building where he worked, I haven't looked it up on the map exactly, but where that new Freedom Tower stands, that's where his building was. He should have been there that morning. He is with us home now, thankfully. This idea of preservation, of self-preservation, of going forward and making sure that whatever you do, you can get through wherever you are now. I love this quote: if you're going through hell, keep going. That's the last place you want to stay. So instead of taking this 1-month-old baby and going in and starting a technical and a marketing agency, I again lost my mind, and I took all my money and I opened a scrapbook store. What? My husband's like, are you nuts? And I said, yes, I am, actually. I had this idea that I needed to connect with people. I needed to get away from the technology. I needed to get away from the marketing and the sugarcoating. And I needed to make something more. And let me tell you something, a scrapbook is the original blog and Tumblr. Because you've got photos, you've got journaling, you've got the artwork around it. It's like, it was perfect training for this. That store failed spectacularly because I'm really not cut out to run a retail store. Apparently, who knew, $100,000 later. That it taught me lessons about people that I didn't know before. This merger between the tactile and the technology and the people. So this idea of perseverance came through. At scrapbook stores, you normally have this event called a crop where people come, women, late at night, and you all work on your books and usually drink and eat M&Ms and do stuff like that. And it's just like the sewing circle kind of thing. One night, I had 3 women come in. All 3 were either current or very former, like recently out of chemo for breast cancer. 3 women, 3 generations, a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. The daughter was my age. They sat there and they could have made things really bad for themselves and been crying, and they did funny things and they documented their lives this way in books. And one of the ladies had come in a couple weeks later and said that she'd lost that book. And I said, well, you can blog, then it's digital and you won't lose it anymore. That point took me forward to where I am today, which is, well, back then what I wound up doing was I took that idea, I taught women, I taught other store owners, I taught everyone that I could. As my own store is failing, I went back into my career and I found ways to help people preserve their memories online, right? Just like a scrapbook. I took my talents and I put them to better use. I started a podcast in 2004 about scrapbooking, Under the Waterline. No one really knew about it except for the people that cared. Right? So I didn't have a huge audience. I wasn't, shock jock kind of thing. It wasn't any of that business, but it was very important for the particular audience that I was at. You couldn't find a more niche audience. Those people saved my life going forward after nearly losing my husband for 9/11 and then going through and losing my store. I started a podcast. I found, does anybody remember Podcast Pickle? Right, okay, right? So we were on the boards, we were doing all of this. I was part of this conversation of what do we name this audio file on the radio, on the internet? That's why my name Lynette Radio, because I was a podcaster, right? So this idea of connecting with people through technology over the internet became so important to me. I started a podcast. I'm not in Wikipedia for this. I didn't put out messages, I didn't put out press releases. I landed a 6-figure sponsorship deal for my scrapbook podcast. I'm pretty sure that's unheard of even to today. Other people are on the books for being the first and the biggest and the blah, blah, blah. You know what? I don't care. They're the 10%. I work in the 90% because my version of success has to do with something else. And it wasn't to be popular. It was to go to the bank. So I want you to think about that too. Are you Twitter famous or are you bank famous? That brings me, my voice is gone, you can tell I've been traveling a lot, I love this quote. My friend J.C. Hutchins, I love him. If I had another brother that I didn't actually fight with, he would be it. And I put his Twitter handle in there because he's one of the only 3 people that I quoted that isn't dead, so you can actually tweet him. He always would say this thing, he'd be like, people, man, people. And it was either for good or for bad. That scrapbook podcast and the blogs and all of this corporate experience that I had moved me forward. And I could tell you something, the perception of others and the perception of myself has a lot to do with the success that a person gets, you know, like your perception of yourself and how you're worried about how other people see you really can put a hindrance on the overnight success, on the success that you have. Because if you're too worried about making sure other people like you, you're never gonna get what you really need, if you even have taken the time to figure that out. And this idea of this perseverance, if you can't get through the tough times or be willing to roll up your sleeves and get it done, this is not meant for you. Because this journey of mine is 25 years old. So the third is the people. All those 2 things would not make a difference today if it wasn't for the people, all of you in this audience. I could tell you all right now, I love you. And I say that jokingly, but this conference means a lot to me. This audience in this industry means a very, very lot to me. I started going when it was Portable Media Expo. Does anybody remember that? Right? So it was, you know, in Ontario, California, and we would get kicked out of the pool all the time, and it was this amazing community. Right? Accident hash would happen there. And those people have carried 10 years now, so it's 2014. So we're talking 10 years that this revolution has been going on, that I've been a part of it. I always call myself this D-lister. I am under the waterline. My success lies in other people's success. If it wasn't for the people sitting all of these chairs, the people that I met 10 years ago, the people that I'm gonna meet in 2 days, none of this success matters. So when Rick tells me, you're an overnight success with Google+, I was like, damn, you know, I have been working really hard. I didn't just show up one day with all of this talent and knowledge and hard work and failures behind me. So you need to figure out where your success is gonna come from. Now, I've never really told the scrapbook story before to anybody that I owned a retail store, because it's something like, well, that doesn't look like the trajectory that you should take as a digital media marketing professional, as a blogger, as a podcaster. But you know what? That's part of my story. And if I didn't have those women sitting there in my shop one day, my trajectory would have been totally different. So I want you to go back and think about the things in your life, the things in your profession that don't look like they fit, but you need to dig and figure out why it's there, why it's supposed to be there. Not try to shove it under the rug or pretend it didn't happen. I mean, mortuary science. I went to college for a little bit for mortuary science. I'm still not sure what that brings me today, but I don't know. I deal with people that don't talk. I don't know what it is. There's a lesson in there somehow. The contacts we make at these conferences, the contacts that we make online, are probably the strongest indicators of our success. My success is under the waterline, and I'm gonna give you this really good example of it. When I was very young, my idea of success was when I would think to myself, I am successful, right? Then it changed. Then I wanted other people to say, she is successful. Now, where I am later, 25 years later, is I want people to say, she helped me become successful. That's where the success lies for me. That's what I do. That's where I work under the waterline. So when I see so many people come up to me and tell me, and not just me, but my peers and contemporaries that are also kind of like get on the stage every once in a while or get to teach a class or internet famous, which I am not. I'm under the waterline. They want to know what the secret is. And I said, the secret is you need to go to the rest of your life and pull out the things that matter and figure out how to make the 90% bigger to rise up so you get more of the 10% on the top. I've been on Google Plus for 2.5 years or however long it's been. And Rick said I have 1.5 million followers, which honestly I don't think is impressive. I used to say if I had $1, like now I'm like, I've upped it. If I had $10 for every follower, then I'd be successful, but it don't. It doesn't do anything unless you do something with those numbers. I have people email me and say, I joined the platform a week after you. If I had only joined when you did, I would be an overnight success like you. Really? Did you have all that other stuff? What's under your waterline? What's going on? What's your 90%? Nothing? Oh, no, it's not going to happen like that. And it's not just this platform. It was Twitter, it was Second Life. Does anybody remember Plurk? Right? Yeah, I have picked some duds, man, let me tell you. I am not, because what I do, like my kind of, what I want to do professionally is reinvent myself all the time, but it's this merger between technology, marketing, and communications. So I have to be out there, so I have picked duds. This one just happened to hit for me. In 5 years, it's going to be something else, and I'm going to be here maybe talking about something else. But the idea is no matter what I do, no matter where my talents are, no matter what you do or where your talents are, you need to pick from your past and figure out how to build your base, build that iceberg. People is the only way I think you can get there. So this idea of icebergs, right? So I've told you that icebergs are 90% under the water, 10% above. The bottom has to get bigger before the top will get bigger, right? So you have to work on that. I liked this one because I used to wonder what really successful, really famous, and those two words are not the same thing, people would feel when others would reach out to them for help. I'm like, are you just freeloading? Are you riding on the 10% of this person trying to get there without building your own 90%? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, no, it's more like having a great ride and a great party. These penguins are having a great time, right? The key about this is to make sure that you're strong enough to support those that you want to help and that you want to make successful as well. I can't help others unless I have a good base for myself. And if you can see this also, the one caveat of all of this is you have to take care of yourself in this industry first. And I don't mean that in a self-serving, negative way. If you don't build your base, if you're not constantly learning, if you're not constantly exploring and improving, you'll get cut off at the waterline. The weakest point and the most dangerous point for an iceberg is at the waterline where the waves hit. People constantly want to knock you down. You can't let that happen. You have to be stronger than that, and you have to keep it where you're able to pull from your past and build your base. So those are kind of some of the things that I wanted to bring to everybody. Like I said, it's really strange for me not to be teaching and more to want to kick off this idea of how to start New Media Expo, how to start this weekend. How many people are brand new here this year? Whoa, that's awesome. Okay, you're gonna have the time of your life this weekend. It's really good. I don't have to go into the typical networking things for you, but what I want to tell you is that for me anyway, and I know there's a lot of people here, like I'd never met Lee, who's coming up after me, never met him in person before, and I have been a huge fan of his for a decade. And we were backstage just talking like old friends kind of thing. It was really nice because that's what this community does. If you have a base that you can build with other people, the tip of the iceberg is just going to be monumental. So please look at that and make sure that you can build that base for yourself this weekend. Thank you.
Great job, Lynette. Thank you very much. Somebody asked me what the shirt said. This is for Efren, who first put this up on, or put that stupid What the Fox Says song. Efren put that up on Facebook before it really blew up. I think it had like 2,000 likes. Now it's got 400 million or something. Anyway, it's the What's the Fox Say t-shirt. So it says quack and tweet and meow and ring-a-ding-ding-a-ding. So that's for you, Efren. I wanted to thank some other people, and I know I'm forgetting people, and please, I remember there was a guy the very first year who was a podcasting DJ, and I'm forgetting his name, so he's going to be mad at me all over again. Do you know that guy's name, Karen? Anyway, he's like a really famous DJ who happens to be a podcaster, and he's a digital scratcher, and he was really cool, and he played our first party at the Hard Rock Cafe, and I forgot to thank him, and he got really pissed off at me, so I'm sorry. And that I'm forgetting your name now, too. That was 7 years ago. So if I'm forgetting to thank you, it's not because I don't appreciate you, it's just because there's so many thousands of people to say thank you to, but a couple that I do want to say. So I mentioned the shirt. Allison Boyer, who's been with us for several years now, she's our lead blogger. She's been doing double duty this year, serving as kind of conference director too, and Allie is actually leaving us after the show. Thank you, Allie, for all of your hard work. So tell her thank you if you see her out there. Coach Deb, who wrote the first book on Twitter with Warren Whitlock and is now working for us. Thank you, Deb. She's been to every show. Shashi, who has been over here, who was in the industry for a long time now. You're kind of out of the social media industry, but you're still here, brought your daughter with you. Thank you very much. And Efren, who from TechZulu, who always does a live stream for us. Efren, you do an awesome job. Jeff Hazlett, who's been a good friend to the show and to me personally. Jeff will be here a little bit later. Scott Stratton, two guys, Scott Stratton and Gary Vee, both came up to me. Gary Vee I met at the first New Media Expo, Blog World. And it was at a party that Sean and Missy from Affiliate Summit were throwing one night after the show. And Gary Vee, I never heard of the guy, comes up to me and goes, dude, I'm going to keynote your next show, man. It's going to be awesome and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, who is this freak? And he kept after me for months and months and months. He's like, I usually get paid lots of money. And this was, again, before Gary was Gary. And I relented and said, okay, you can give a keynote. And he killed it. He was awesome. He was like running up and down the hallways going, come on, we're going to go to the keynote. And again, it was really before he was the guy he is now. So thank you, Gary. Scott Stratton also, same thing. He came up to me to show. He goes, dude, I'm going to be your keynoter next year. I'm like, who is this guy? At Unmarketing. And he did. He gave a keynote, and he killed it. We still use the picture of him giving that keynote talk in some of our marketing stuff. And Scott will be giving a keynote tomorrow morning. You want to be here early. The first 500 people here will get a free book from Scott, and then he'll do book signings afterwards. Stephanie Agresta, great friend. We don't get to see enough of each other this year because we're too busy with work. She's got two beautiful kids now. I remember when Stephanie did the first blog, what do they call the blog room at South by? Blogger Lounge, excuse me. Blogger Lounge at South by now. I think they call it the New Media Lounge. She's still doing that. And Stephanie came from being an affiliate manager to now like vice president of social media at one of the biggest PR companies in the world. So social media can bring you a pretty bright future. Tom and Tamsin Webster, awesome people, both speaking again this year. Rich Brooks, who didn't make it. Chris Brogan is going to fill in for Rich Brooks this afternoon at 1:30. And I think Rich will be proud to say that Chris was his substitute. So we couldn't get Rich, but we got the next best thing. Mitch Cantor, who always does an awesome talk, and just a really good guy. David H. Lawrence. Is David here this morning? David was one of the villains and heroes. He's like a TV star, famous guy, huge podcaster. He's been so supportive, really nice guy. Amy Porterfield, amazing, thank you. So all that said, I'm going to introduce Lee Odden. As I mentioned before, Lee had told me how he sees so many different groups of friends here at New Media Expo. Lee has been a good friend to me in the social media world. We have so many people that we know via the social channels. We only get to see each other a couple times a year at an event like this or some other events kind of that we all go to. So this is a reunion as much as it is anything else. The thing, I've seen Lee speak at this show so many times. His talks are always standing room only. I've seen him talk at other shows, and every time, and the suckiest thing about running the show is I don't get to see any of the sessions. I started it because I wanted to go see them, and now I'm running from room to room and getting everything done. I've never got to see one session from beginning to end. So, and I remember Kim from T-Bex told me when we bought the show, she's like, this is so awesome, I get to go to the show now. So maybe one day I can be like Kim. But Lee, every talk he gives is amazing. So I don't want to overhype him and put too much pressure on him. But his content is so freaking good. He always, and it's not just fluffy, kumbaya stuff. He's got like real data. So I hope you do, Lee. Have some real data for us because, I've really put the pressure on. And Lee told me a good Chris story a little bit earlier. I hope you share that because it's such a symbol of kind of where this all started and where we are today. So please welcome again another good friend, Lee Odden. Thank you.
How awesome is that? Wow. And how awesome are you making it all the way from wherever you were to Las Vegas? Very, very excited to be here. NMX and its predecessor name, Blog World, have been instrumental for me for a very long time. And so very excited. How humble is Lynette? I was listening to her tell those stories. That was so awesome. Yeah, yeah. She's the person that makes the famous people famous, you know? I mean, that's pretty incredible. So very, very excited to be here, very excited to see you and share some tips, some lessons, some things that I've learned. I got into the digital marketing space at an agency where, you know, they were making websites and they weren't marketing them. So I thought, wow, that's a new revenue opportunity. So I started teaching myself that and grew the business a little bit. And then a woman named Susan Michukanis started a public relations firm and needed someone to optimize their website. And I thought, okay, I can do that. And then they started offering, and this is 2001, they started offering SEO with public relations, which wasn't really something you put together. And we won British Telecom's US division as a client, displacing Weber Shandwick. Whoa, I think we're on to something. And so I ended up becoming an employee, a partner, and the CEO of that company. And what happened after a couple of years was, you know, we don't have any resources. I don't know if anyone can relate to that. We don't have a lot of marketing resources. We need to get more customers. The bubble just burst, right? Tech companies were not investing in 2001 in marketing services. So we've got to find a way to stand out. And I was troubled by this. And what I ended up doing, of course, was starting to blog. Oh, by the way, while I do blog a lot, I'm a huge Instagram fan. If you're like me and you take mediocre, almost crappy photos, but you can make them look awesome by oversaturating them with the Instagram filters, then please feel free to join me on Instagram and we'll be awesome, sucky, sucky awesome together. Sweet. So that's what it's like for me at home. I was just skiing with my family in a place in northern Minnesota called Lutzen, 26 below without the wind chill. And it's kind of funny because, you know, me and my wife and my kids, we're all skiing, it's no big deal, whatever. And then, you know, I start hearing about the snowpocalypse that's happening on the East Coast. And in Minnesota, we have a word for snowpocalypse. It's called winter. And it happens every year. And when it's that cold, I mean, really, what else is there to do but blog and, you know, have more kids or whatever, practice at least. So the thing I like to say is the best part of being in Minnesota, of course, is leaving for places like the North Shore and Oahu. But of course, we're not in Hawaii, we're in Las Vegas. And we'll have to put up with 60 degrees instead of 90. But that's okay, because this is such an awesome, amazing community. Like I said, and like Rick said, that there's so many connections that have been made here that I've made. It's incredible. One of the big reasons I'm here, and it's amazing that I'm even here too, but Rick asked me, God, it was maybe 6-8 months ago, and he sat down, he's like, Lee, I was thinking maybe, you know, would you like to keynote Blog World or NMX? And I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Like, this is on a list of mine, right? You all have a mental list of things you'd love to do, you know? And it's amazing how blogging has helped me check off some of those things on that list, but I thought, wow, what an incredible opportunity to share tips and advice and experiences with a community that's given me so much over the last couple of years. And I've been blogging for 10 years. We've been publishing our blog for about 10 years, and we just celebrated or marked the 10-year birthday of that blog about 2 weeks ago. And so I thought, well, you know, 10 years, you got to learn some stuff, right? You've got to learn some things to be successful that you can share with other people. Part of our primary goals for blogging with our agency, and by the way, I own a small boutique digital marketing agency, very high impact, very big clients, but very, very small organization. So blogging plays a very important role, so the goals are very important. Fundamentally, it's to create awareness, as you do, but it's also to create demand, right? In 10 years, we don't do advertising. We've never had a salesperson, right? It's all inbound. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is about how to achieve that. So the primary goal for our blog is to create awareness and demand through creating useful and engaging content, but also something more specific, and to serve as an inbound marketing and public relations platform that we can use to target specific people that we would like to do business with, that we would like to come and work for us, that we would like to write about us in their blogs or in publications. So doing that, it's been good for us. Over 10 years, 3,500 blog posts. I've written about 2,700 of them, well over 1 million words. Our network is around 300,000, not 1.5 million on Google Plus like Lynette has, but a pretty formidable size for such a small company. And we've had some great contributors to this blog over the years. And especially lately, Nicolette and Eliza has been publishing a lot more often. In fact, we have 3 folks that are live blogging at this event. You'll probably run into them, Eliza, Nick, and Ben. And, it's kind of funny. I wrote a book called Optimize, and it published a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago. And it was when I was walking through the halls here at Blog World that I ran into my friend Jay Baer, and this woman was with him. She was an acquisition editor from Wiley. And she said, "Lee, I just sent you an email." I'm like, "Who are you?" I don't know who you are. And she said, "Would you write a book for us?" And I don't know if she was stalking me, but somehow we were in San Francisco at the same time. We were in London at the same time. And finally, after a year, I decided, okay, I'm going to write a book. I want to know what it's like. I want to go through the experience. And that happened. That connection was made here at Blog World. And of course, we cross-post from the book to the blog, and there's lots of other connections too. Because of our blog, we've been written up about in major publications. No public relations firm, no media relations intern smiling and dialing, trying to get people to write stories about us, all of it inbound. Some really amazing partnerships, content project and content partnerships with organizations like Marketing Profs, the largest marketing network on the planet Earth, 300,000, 400,000 members there. Content Marketing World, and we've even done things with NMX. And then, of course, the stuff that makes you money. Again, no salespeople, and I say this not to talk about us, it's just that, with limited resources, how can you achieve really amazing things? How can blogging and social media and media play such a big part with such what appears to be small effort? Those are the stories I'm here to share. And so not only have we been working with McKesson, a $110 billion company, for 6 years, when they called, no, 7 years, 8 years, something like that. When they called, I was still working in my basement. Oh my God, this $100 billion company wants me to come and give a presentation to their, to a council of marketing directors and public relations people. And I gave my presentation on day 1, and then I came back on day 2, and my contact comes up to me and says, "Lee, the senior vice president of marketing was in the room yesterday, and we were wondering if we could engage your agency on an ongoing basis." Yes, you can. Yes, you can. How are we going to fulfill? I have no idea, but we can do it. And we're working with companies, HP. When Michael Brito was with HP, he left a comment on our blog, and then he emailed me, and he's like, "Hey, Lee, I've been reading your blog for 6 months. We have a project. Are you available?" How awesome is that? LinkedIn, it goes on and on. So it's pretty cool stuff, and it's a team effort. But I have to say, it's the online to offline connection. That's where the magic happens, okay? Just publishing online, just blogging, it's just not enough. Networking, old school with people in the real world, it's just not enough. It's a cycle of content creation and community building that blogging and participating at events that actually brings the magic when it comes to growing a sizable network with limited resources, that creates awareness and drives demand, people looking for you, going out of their way to find you. Hopefully you're available, okay? So it's been a journey. With limited resources, you have to make some hard choices, and in our case, some of them have not been good. I've said yes to some people and things that I should have backed out of. And I've said no to some situations and people that, but it's not about regretting. It's about learning, and we've learned a lot in this journey. And in that journey, there's some key questions that have come up. I wish I would have known the answers to some of these things when I got started. One of them is blogging going to be relevant to my business still today with all the ease of Facebook, the ease of setting up a Twitter account, the ease of setting up a Pinterest account compared to writing 500-word articles 2 or 3 times a week? It's kind of tempting, and it's something that's on a lot of marketers' minds. Where does blogging fit in a situation where so much effort is allocated to social media, and people feel like they're running out of ideas. They don't have the resources to create the content. And also, how can I scale content through a blogging platform with minimal resources? I'm sure that's something folks want to know. So to help answer those questions, we'll go back in time a little bit. 2003, there we go. I was in Minneapolis talking to a fellow. We were part of a geek group, because if you have technical skills, you're a geek, apparently, when you're in the Minnesota Interactive Marketing Association. Garrick Van Buren asked me, Lee, so you've been blogging. Looks like you're doing some cool stuff. So why are you doing it? What? I mean, what's your strategy? And I'm like, I have no flipping strategy. What are you talking about? It's all about SEO, right? And that's what a lot of folks are still doing today. They're creating web pages, they're creating blog posts to serve as something that might show up in the search results, to serve as something that could be socially shared or something that could be linked to. And it was very, very tactical, my approach. And at the time, the competition wasn't great. There was only 1.5 million blogs. And what was in my mind was, look, this is a place to experiment with stuff. It's a publishing platform that I can use. I'm not a writer. I have a sociology degree, okay? I'm not a writer. That was not my background. But here was a place where I could curate news from the industry. I could share news with our clients. I could share news with our customers. And I could practice writing articles. And I was thinking, too, it would be a great place to promote our company's services, right? And obviously, there's SEO benefit. And the other thing is that there were a lot of other people blogging at the time in the SEO industry, so I wanted to write about stuff that only SEOs would ever care about, Florida Update and latent semantic indexing and bullshit like that. And I started wondering, how is this actually going to help my customers, right? I'm writing for competitors. How is that actually helping my customers? So that was a seed that got planted while I started to get some breaks. We started to get some breaks. And one came from Steve Hall from AdRants, who put out a call on a discussion thread that said, hey, who would like to live blog ad tech? Live blog, what's that? That's writing articles in real time. And I'm sure a lot of people know what that is. It is not easy to do this. It was not easy for me. But kind of like teaching someone to swim by throwing them into the ocean, there you go, I learned how to live blog. And I have to say, it is a priceless skill. It is an absolutely priceless skill. In fact, live blogging, and Barry Schwartz from Search Engine Roundtable invited me to live blog with his team at search conferences. And ultimately, we started bringing live bloggers to events ourselves. And our blog, Top Rank Blog, became the very first blog to be a formal media sponsor at Search Engine Strategies, which at the time was getting 3,000 to 6,000 people at their events. We didn't have to pay anything. In fact, they covered us. And so I was able to send tons of my employees to conferences, collecting information, networking, getting knowledge, but also creating content. So that was a big break. The other one was getting recognized on lists. Todd Anderlich created a list of marketers, which then got taken over by Ad Age, and we were on that list. Very, very visible list. And I thought, gosh, that's pretty smart. I think I'll start creating lists of our own. And we created something called the Big List of search marketing blogs. And the thing is you couldn't, if you asked to get on, I'd say, nope. There's no way to get on the list unless I noticed you, unless you linked to us. So guess what? The SEO community went nuts and linked to us by tens of thousands. It was amazing. And that got us on the radar too. Fast forward, competition, because of over 180 million blogs being started, and demand, because of over nearly 350 million people reading blogs on a regular basis, started to happen. And we really started to make some connections. Like by now, we've got a plan. And instead of just promoting our stuff, backed off on the self-promotion and started thinking about empathizing with our readers. And so many folks that are blogging, and this is cool to do, especially on a personal blog, I'm writing about what I'm interested in. Yeah? Of course, that's cool. But if you have accountability to growing business, if you're accountable to serving the interests of a community, you want to grow a community, then you've got to think about things from their point of view. So empathy with who you are trying to connect with started to happen, and answering questions, finding out from customer service staff or frontline interactions, what really drove a lot of the content. And it's very much focused on answering those questions, also working with thought leaders, and by proxy, becoming a thought leader ourselves. In 2013, gaining tons of momentum, getting posts published like this, where nearly 20, this is just 3 or 4 days ago, we recognize women who rock on the social web. Most of the women who make this list are nominated by their peers, other people who made the list the year before. And this list came about by me being added to a list myself 4 years ago. And I'm like, there's no women on this list. This is stupid. I know all kinds of women kicking ass on the social web or on social media. So I made a list, kaboom, and we make this list every year. So it's amazing exposure that keeps us top of mind. We're not selling anything, we're recognizing talent. And just in the last year, we took on LinkedIn as a client. Dell, done projects with General Mills. Content Marketing Institute has named our blog the #1 content marketing blog 3 times. Copy Blogger hasn't gotten that. Convince and Convert haven't gotten that. Those are fantastic blogs, but that's kind of a cool thing. Social Media Examiner recognized us as a top social media blog. And of course, Optimize continues to stay in the top 10 in its category on Amazon. And the cool thing is, a lot of that content, 25% of that content came from our blog for that book. Nearly every single major engagement we get into, the book comes up as, I've read your blog, we've read the book, are you available? So what does blogging look like for us now? This is what's in my head as I plan blogging out, as I plan blog posts out for myself. We've got distinct audiences. We have the community at large. You have prospective customers, prospective people to work at the company. We have existing customers. We have influencers in the media. And then we have layers of content. I focus on thought leadership content. Right? So many folks they're just blogging. They're just blogging, and the diversity comes from different topics. But I look at it through layers. So there's thought leader content, then there's practical, tactical content, and then there's news-related content, and then there's conference and event-oriented content, like the posts you're going to see from us, from Nick, Ben, and Eliza. So the killer question is, how can I grow a business that's known all over the world, right? That people know and respect with virtually no salespeople, no advertising, and definitely no salespeople, and only one person dedicated to marketing. There we go. Got to have the obligatory baby picture. It's not my baby, somebody's baby. It's cute. So there's the 10 lessons. That's how to answer that question. So, first thing, stand for something. If you're trying to be all things to all people, not only are you competing with your other companies in your space, but you're competing with yourself. Right? Stand for something. What is it that if you had to give someone a 10-second description of what it is that you're blogging about, what would be that one thing? How do you want to be known? Specificity rules the day on the search in the social web. That's how information retrieval works. It looks for the best answer and surfaces it in search results. When you ask your friends for a recommendation, what's a really good restaurant, a Thai restaurant near the Rio in Vegas, right? Something's got to stand out. They're going to give you 1 or 2 responses. So be specific and make it easy for people to understand what you're all about. In our case, we focused on the notion of online marketing, not search marketing, not public relations, not content, online marketing. And I see at another SEO company took SEO out of its name just recently, which is kind of funny. So whether you look on LinkedIn or you look on search results, you look on our site, you see online marketing as a very specific thing that we stand for, as something we want to be known for. You can architect this through a hub and spoke model. A blog can be a centerpiece to that hub and spoke. God, I talk really fast, don't I? And each of those things that you want to be known for has its own ecosystem, its own networks, its own content plans, so that you can be that best answer for each one of those things. Each of those are channels of distribution, so that you can create awesome, relevant content, right, that empathizes with the target audience, gives them the information they need to get done what they want to get done. The second tip, make an effort to know your reader, know your customer, right? Think about how is it that they discover information on the web or anywhere. What are their preferences for consumption, right? Do they like images? Do they like video? Do they like long blog posts? Do they like short ones, right? Do they like news content? Do they like how-tos? Understand also what devices they're using to consume that content. Look at your web analytics and see how much referring mobile traffic you've got. If it's double digits, you better make sure your blog is mobile optimized, that it's responsive. And thirdly, understand your customer or your reader in terms of what offers or messages will motivate them to take action. It might not be a sale that you're after. It might simply be to make a comment. It might be a social share. It might be to respond to a question that you've asked. But if you empathize with your target audience and come to know them, what are their pain points, what is their experience like through empathy, then you can optimize for a better experience, better discovery, consumption, and action. So as an example, if I had a digital photography blog, obviously people like digital photography for different reasons, right? So in marketing and content marketing, direct marketing especially, you can do customer segmentation. I don't know a whole lot of bloggers that get into customer segmentation per se, especially those who are just writing casually. But if you have a business blog, this absolutely fits in a content marketing context, where you do need to understand who's your best customers, who's your worst customers. You don't want to optimize for the worst customers, obviously. And as you understand those goals, those journeys, and gain insights from what it is that they care about, then you can actually give it to them through blogging. Third lesson, no plan is a plan to fail. Yeah, I suffered this one for over a year. I mean, I wasted so much time and so much effort. Granted, it's a cool thing to be experimenting, and I encourage you to be experimenting, right? I mean, you've got a blog with 100,000, 200,000 unique visitors every month. It's great to throw stuff out there just to see what happens, because I've got qualitative data to respond to. But you've got to have a plan to get to that point. So make sure when you do create a plan that you're aligning the topics that you want to be known for with some kind of tangible, measurable goal. One of the most useful tools for managing this kind of thing is, of course, a content editorial plan. And you can download this one for free. It's ungated. You don't just go there and download it. It's a spreadsheet. There's the URL on the bottom. And this is something I've used for a long time. And it includes, obviously, the topics, the categories, the tags, the keywords, the target audience type, what stage in the buying cycle that they are, what type of media will you include in that blog post, how you're going to promote it, and even where are you going to reuse this information in the future. It's a very, very useful tool, and it can save you a hell of a lot of time. And it can help you create a much better experience for the people that you're trying to engage with. Fourth lesson, social drives discovery, search validates. What do I mean? Well, it used to be that you could just, so much searching going on. There's 12 billion queries on Google a month alone. But increasingly, social occupies people's time and attention. And we're asking our friends for recommendations. As an example, when I was doing a keynote in Portland, Oregon, I went to Facebook and I asked my friends, what's cool to do in Portland, Oregon? And my friend Melody said a bunch of stuff. And one of the things she said was voodoo donuts. As you can tell, I like the donuts. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. So what do you do at this point? Do I just go to Voodoo Donuts? I really don't even know who they are. When someone gives you a recommendation on social, don't you often go to Google or maybe Bing to validate? So I did. I went to Google. I typed in Voodoo Donuts, and I'm presented with a cornucopia of information updated in real time that any one individual probably would never be able to give to me. So think about this. When you understand who it is, the experience, the information experience of the people that you're writing for, that you're creating content for. Think about the role of search and social. They're not the same thing as 2 or 3 years ago. They work together. It's not mutually exclusive, okay? The fifth lesson, great content isn't great until someone actually reads it and does something with it, right? And I hear a lot of folks in the blogging community say, all you got to do is create great content. The traffic will come. Good luck with that. I mean, if you're in a competitive category, you've got to have a lot of patience. And if you're running a business, can you afford to wait? So you've got to bake promotion into content creation. And it's very important as you empathize with who the audience is, who the readers are, that you are optimizing, not just for search, but optimizing for a fantastic experience. In our case, our approach is this notion of be the best answer, right? Customers don't care that you have an email marketing campaign. They don't care that you're running ads or that you hired a PR firm to get publications to write about you. They don't care about any of that. They have their own problems. They have their own information needs. They just want to solve a problem. So it's your job to find out where do they go and to be not just present, but to create the signals of credibility that translate into you being the best answer wherever they may look. And this is what we're doing through conferences, through blogging, through social networks, and so forth. A sixth lesson, co-created content is cool. That's where you're creating content with your customers, or you're creating content with industry thought leaders, or just people in your social community. But it's also a fantastic form of social networking. Here's an example. When we partnered with Content Marketing World, we've been creating ebooks, speaker ebooks before the events. And the one we did just recently, 36 content marketers who rock. And so there were 36, obviously. Now, after doing that exercise and interacting with quite a few of these folks, 32 of those folks I'm now connected with on LinkedIn, and several I'm in discussions with. Okay? So it doesn't work unless you're creating value. Right? Whoever your target audience is, find out what they need. And in this case, in this example, speakers, I know from experience, are concerned about having to compete with someone else that's more famous in the same time slot. And nothing is worse than when you're a speaker going into a room and there's nobody in there because famous Jane is over in the other room and everyone's going, ah, right? So what can we do to help them solve that problem? By creating an ebook that focused on what they would be talking about, and other conferences usually don't do that kind of thing. So by asking smart questions, a cool thing that's fun to be a part of, they're invested in participating and sharing it. That's the nature of co-created content, but it's also a fantastic networking opportunity as well. Same kind of thing happened with marketing props. Seventh lesson, most people have a finite number of ideas in their brain about what they're going to blog about. Is anyone run out of ideas? Blogger's block? I can't see you anyway, so you don't have to raise your hand, but virtually raise your hand. Yeah, after 10 years, are you kidding? So you've got to look beyond yourself. You've got to ask for help from your team, and you've got to connect with your community. If you've got an active social community, you will never run out of ideas if you care. If you care about your community, you're participating with them. So these are examples of just, doing polls, asking questions. In fact, creating this kind of content is also another good social networking opportunity, especially if you're trying to connect with industry thought leaders. So the eighth lesson is whatever can be found in search can be optimized. What do I mean by that? Okay. That's good because I only have 5 minutes left. So there we go. Yeah, whatever can be found in search can be optimized. So it's important for you to pay attention to what actually shows up in search for the things that you want to be known for, right? So now this is a little tricky because of personalization, but if you go to Google and you type in keywords, phrases, topics, whatever that you want to be known for, take a look at the landscape of the search results. Not just at who's showing up, but what kind of content. I've seen it happen so many times where PDF files, spreadsheets, and things that aren't web pages are kicking ass in a particular niche category. In this case, you see when I search for social media, ads are on the top, as you do, but there's also Wikipedia. Can we get on there? There's websites, news, and images. How can we optimize images to take a backdoor into the first page search results for social media? Who's optimizing for video? Who's optimizing for PDF files, right? Those are all potential entry points. So understand the different types of content that show up in search results for the things that you want to be known for. Number 9, a blog is only as interesting as the interest you show in your community. If all you do is talk about yourself, if all you do is talk about what you care about, and you never actually ask your community questions, then obviously people aren't going to be very interested. And the formula I found is this notion of ask and recognize. So go to Twitter, ask a simple question, aggregate, accumulate the answers and use that as a blog post. Do it on LinkedIn, do it on Facebook with permission, right? There's do reviews of, ask authors for books and do reviews of them. Ask people to do interviews and then recognize that they've participated. This is especially true if you go somewhere like Twitter. Just recently, one of our clients has told me, she said, hey, I am having a debate internally about what's the difference between an ebook and a white paper. And I answered that, and it's like, oh, okay, let's use that as a blog post. And of course, I will link back to her. I will recognize. I asked her if it's okay, and then I will recognize her. People work for a living, but they'll die for recognition. Don't underestimate the value of calling it like it is and recognizing talent and contribution. And lastly, optimize for customers. Make sure your content is accountable. Oh my God, it's 5 in the morning and I don't have a blog post to write yet today. Oh my, what am I going to do? Or it's 7 o'clock at night, the night before, and I've got to write a blog post for tomorrow. Try not to let yourself get in that situation. But if you have a blog plan, at least the blog plan will tell you what things you need to cover so you can be accountable for 3 things. How is this going to attract attention? What messages will be included so that it will engage our audience? And thirdly, what key messages will be in there that will motivate conversion? And a conversion doesn't have to be a sale or transaction. It can just be whatever you need them to do in the next step in a buying cycle, right? This notion of creating demand is all about giving people relevant information when and where they need it and helping them pull themselves to the next logical step until ultimately they decide they want to do business with you. This has been the key to our marketing for almost 13 years. And so some of the tips there, obviously want to include in that plan that's driving that content creation is who your target audience is, where they are in the buying cycle, what are the topical triggers that will motivate them. You can go to social media monitoring tools and you can do keyword queries and see what other words often appear next to the words you want to be known for, and you can use that to optimize for social in the same way that you might go to Google's keyword planner and look for the most popular search keywords. I only have a few seconds left, so takeaways. If you start blogging, finish it. Don't quit. There's so many Fortune 500, Inc. 500 companies. They are blogging. They're blogging actually more now than before, but only at 30 and 40% respectively. So many folks are starting blogs and not finishing them because they aren't inspired. They're not asking for help. They're not thinking about their audience. They're only thinking about what the company has to promote, and therefore they run out of ideas. Think about the meaningful, not just the mechanical. Don't just populate your social networks with automated tweets, automated LinkedIn updates from your blog. Actually go out and engage with people and create content that matters. Create value, build your brand through thought leadership, and create demand. Believe me, there's nothing more satisfying than having a business grow successfully where all of your customers come in simply saying, we've heard about you, you're credible, we like what you have to say, are you available? And lastly, don't go it alone. And I mean, ask your team members, ask your employees for help, ask your customers for help. Because if you join together, there's nothing you can't accomplish, especially when it comes to creating compelling, meaningful content. So, I think I'm out of time. Yes, I am out of time. Let's get social. There's my contact information. Thank you very much.
Did Lee live up to the hype? Awesome job, Lee. Thank you very much. A couple quick things before I let you guys go. Somebody told me once before, I had an argument with a content creator who said content like that wasn't relevant to him, and somebody told me SEO was snake oil. If you're a podcast or a web TV creator and you didn't take something away from Lee's talk right now, I don't think you were paying attention. That stuff is very important to your content. I want to say thanks to Dave Delaney, who's going to be talking for the first time this year. U.S. Army, tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., workout with a drill sergeant, if you've got it in you. I know we have so many sessions. People always say it's hard to choose which one to go to at the same time. That's why we have the virtual ticket. You can get that if you like. We do have a few schedule changes because of the weather, so bear with us there. Attendee orientation for first-timers. It's going to be in the New Media Lounge right now. I'll be running over there. Another thing, we mentioned a lot of names here, social media people, names you may have heard. This is not a good old boys club. Everybody here is approachable. Do not be afraid if it's your first time to walk up to anybody here and say, hi, my name's so-and-so, and I appreciate what you do, or I've got a question for you. Everybody here is approachable. You're as important as everybody else here. Also, Meshfire. Check in your attendee bag. Meshfire is a new company by Amber Osborne and Elias. I don't know if you're out there, but they're giving you free use of the system, which is social media monitoring system, for I think 6 months. So check that. And a couple other people I want to say or I'll mention those later. I'll let you guys go. Let's go into the sessions. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great show.